して集いしスターダスト100年目の目覚めに呼ばれて男たちは向かう時の砂を越えるジャーニー鎖のよう連なる絡み合うカルマ光で勝つ定めスタネ打ち込むのはオンライナ誇りのバレーブレイクダウン拳放つ聖なるビジョンスタンドQuiet!
Let me tell you a story.
Hello, completely trash here. Can we full clear all 8 raid wings as 5 players? This is a question that has plagued us since the birth of Parawa JoJo. Due to the genius of the developers at ArenaNet, Greer got a hardened rage, so the answer is no. But also due to the genius of the developers at ArenaNet, they buffed all the DPS numbers to 50k plus, so the answer is also yes. Yes. Cue the intro.
It's... What a joke.
Fair greens.
Oh my god. Take the...
Matt. I don't know how to go back now.
Ten seconds. 2. Are you joking?
Only.
Oh my god, we're gonna be stuck on this wing for like...
What a joke.
I can't, man. Everyone dead on the beach. Okay. Do we have shields? No. Oh my god. Oh, what a meme, man. It's fucking CA. Baboons.
Baboons have no mites. I got 25. 15.
Oh my god.
Freeze on Thrill instead.
5 seconds.
Oh,
4,
indeed.
3.
It's a fail. GG. On camp we basically started by tagging all the ads and then breaking line of sight. This is a famous dungeon maneuver that you do in order to get all the ads to your position and then just gear cleave them instead of just chasing them one by one. We use the heal chrono and a support scourge in order to basically survive the intense damage, but this is much faster than just doing it one by one. Decima, P1 and P2 are completely the same as 10 men. There is very little difference. On P3, Decima becomes the hardest boss to lawman for 2 main reasons. Reason number 1 is the arrow mechanic. Usually you need 5 people to spread around with the orange arrows, and you need 3 people to stack on the green arrow. This means you need a total of 8 players in order to succeed. On a lawman, we were basically forced to stack those mechanics, which means 3 people with the orange arrows were now stacked on the green arrow. The penalty for that is an insane amount of incoming damage. The solution was to spread the stack on the green arrow and to pump a lot of barrier by the heal chrono and the spectre. The second reason is damage control. Since we don't have the manpower to actually collect the greens, we decided to completely ignore the mechanic and gave the boss stacks. At precisely 10 stacks, Decima enrages and wipes the entire raid. Our main issue was the more DPS you have, the more greens you're gonna get, suffering from success. On most of our Decima runs, we always killed precisely on 9 stacks and sometimes even almost on 10. On Greer, we decided to use tanking in order to remove pressure from the group. It's always better to have one person who focuses on mechanics instead of sharing the burden. The tank basically deletes the orbs and most importantly turns Greer away from the group. The main focus was always to position according to the tank and try to cleave the adds and the boss. Communication was really important because we had to always position according to the tank so we won't steal the tanking and die to mechanics. Ura, for the most part, is a very simple boss. Do the mechanics and you will win. The healer focused on CC and Titan spawns, while the group just focused on DPS and did the mechanics.
For SH, our biggest problem was the wall RNG, spamming us with the massive walls back to back. We had a more aggressive comp before, but we opted for a safer comp using a DPS Scourge, since it brought Sandswell, so we can just jump over any bad walls. On top of that, we also had problems with the golems, since they kept dying on the group, because we'd either have too much cleave and instantly kill it before it was pushed, or just too little cleave and have it walk back again and die on group. So the Scourge just brought Epi and made sure it died off group every time. River of Souls was fairly standard and we just opted for basic pug strats. We sent 4 players ahead and clear, and we had 1 player stay behind with Decima to heal her and also give her super speed so she walks faster. Next up is Eyes of Darkness. Because we don't have 10 players, we can't split to both North and South Eye at the same time. So what we do is we just go to the North Eye, DPS it to 5%, and we portal to the South Eye. Since we have to portal from North to South and South to North back again, we have a Mimic portal. We then kill the South Eye, we return to the North Eye, which is at 5%, and that way we can sync both kills. Eater of Souls is another relatively simple boss. We kill the spiders using convenience portals so we can just travel back to the center, and we go for the second green. The only difference is we send only 4 players up, and we leave the chrono behind to CC the bar. This way we don't have to sack a player, and we won't get any downstates. Broken King is actually one of the scariest bosses to low man right now, and this is because they made the freeze mechanic way more punishing. To make it as safe as possible, we ran 3 DPS players on Scourge, because they had access to Parasitic Contagion for self-sustain and Barrier. We had these 3 DPS players rotate the orb collection between themselves, so they freeze as fast as possible, one by one. That way we won't get 2 players frozen at the same time. We had the other 2 players split roles between tanking the boss and healing the group, and these 2 players, they still collected greens, but they tried their best not to freeze at any given time. The most important thing about this fight and why it's extremely scary to low man is that we needed constant communication, and at any given moment things can go wrong very fast. So we needed a good balance of DPS, awareness, and communication all at the same time. Finally, Dhuum was very standard, but just like normal Dhuum, it's very punishing. Most of the fight is the same, except in low man we just needed a bit of power damage for the pre-event to make sure it's done. The main Dhuum fight is standard, but then at the 10% phase we had to activate 7 buttons at the same time. Because we're only 5 players, we got the Ritualist and the Chrono, who had access to Blink and Self-Sustain, activate 2 buttons back to back.
CA is one of the few bosses where usually you don't want a healer. After a few runs we experience instability when 1 or 2 mechanics just went wrong, resulting in a wipe. The healer was the solution for a safe run. As for the mechanics, we used a basic sword and shield collection with solo collectors. On Twin Largos, usually the squad splits into 2 groups. On a low man we cannot really divide since we don't have the manpower. We are basically going as one and use portals to navigate from platform to platform. On the last platform we leave early doing CC in order to not waste time on breaking the bar, and not killing in order to reduce the amount of time the boss is enraged. On Qadim, we use the basic comp of a Deadeye Kite, a Ritualist solo lamp with a Catalyst and a Chrono that can pre-stack a lot of wounds for the solo lamp. On every phase, the main goal was to phase exactly before the CC phase, meaning we had a minor DPS check. The Chrono was responsible for pulling the ads, and the Tempest was responsible for cleaving them. On P3, we still use the solo lamp since Ritualist is so strong. He can handle it himself really fast, which gave us the option to have a lamp opener without bothering the other 3 players that are kiting and tanking.
Next up we have Wing 3. For Escort we start by GGing to skip the dialogue, and then we split the group into 3 teams. We had Team 1 and 2 take the tunnel so they can quickly get to the towers and clear, while Team 3 would escort Glenna and give her super speed. In the courtyard, Team 3 would blink and hug the wall so that they can skip the spawn points of the ads and make the traversal much safer. After the first tower is captured and after Glenna captures the first circle, Team 1 is assigned to clear all the towers, and Team 2 leaves them to fulfill their role, which is front ward duty. Usually when we're quick enough, only 1 back ward would ever reach Glenna. For this, we have a druid who has Entangle and can perma-immobilize the warg. Meanwhile, the wargs and the ads that spawn in the front are much more of a threat. So we have Team 2 immob them and try to delete them as fast as possible. This way the player escorting Glenna has a much safer time. For Keep Construct, the biggest issue is the capping event that happens after breaking the bar. This capping event requires 6 players, which we can't do as 5-man. So the only viable solution without using bugs is to not CC at all. One of the ways to do this is to use classes that bring as little CC as possible while doing their full rotation, but this limits our options too much. Instead, we can go for a much more aggressive comp, but in return we have to respect the mechanics. Whenever one of the players gets a fixation, they have to instantly leave the group to delete the ad outside of KC's hitbox. That way, it doesn't remove any of his stacks, and he would never even get his Defiance bar. The final boss of the wing is Xera. The biggest issue for Xera is actually the pre-event, since the pre-event had to be completed within a certain amount of time. So we sent 4 players to do the left side, and then double back. Meanwhile, we had a single player solo the first platform on the right, so that by the time the 4 players return from the left side, we can go as 5 and complete the final platform on the right side. We tried many different comps to make sure we can delete the crystal in one burn. We found that having at least 2 ritualists made the crystal extremely consistent, and allowed us to have 1 flexible slot for the 3rd DPS. So by having the 3rd DPS be a Condi conduit, We were able to push the DPS in the first phase, enough so that we can skip the second CC bar and save a lot of time in the first phase. And the rest of the fight is pretty standard.
On Cairn, we used a heal chrono tank to take all the damage away from the group and give stability. Other than that, don't get ported and do DPS. After Cairn, there's the famous transition to MO with the shovel pre-event. Mesmer portals are famous for navigating it much faster. MO is a famous golem boss. The only critical moment in the fight is when the 3 golems ads come to the team at the same time. They will always target the player with the protect mechanic, therefore that player can keep them outside and use protect when they die to avoid the explosion. On Samarog, we push the quickness catalyst to get all fixations since his CC output is low and it lets the superior CC specs to just do better. On the split phases, the druid pushed Rigon and used Immob in order to keep him inside the bubble. Deimos pre-event was done by splitting into 4. Each person had to destroy his own chain at the same time as the others. For Deimos himself, we used a healer which was hand-kiting, healing and booning at the same time. For the tanking, we just used our quickness catalysts while the ritualists were just there to DPS and aegis the slums. At 25% we decided to sacrifice the Ritualist because it lets us to reach 10% much faster, while knowing that the Ritualist can survive with all the sustain it has on it.
After Wing 4, and more specifically after Deimos, all the remaining wings are much easier, starting with Wing 2. We use a Mirage to skip through the tunnel and portal the group straight to the boss. Sloth is a very standard fight. We ate the shrooms very aggressively to maximize DPS, and we used Chrono and Ritualist to pull in all the slublings. Next up is Trio, which was extremely easy and had a lot of downtime. When planning the order of the wings, we made note of this downtime in Wing 2, since this was the ideal moment to try and open Wing 1. Opening Wing 1 has a lot of RNG when we're trying to go for a speed clear, since we specifically want to have the pre-event with blue in the middle. This, however, is very RNG dependent. In our run, it took over 13 attempts to finally get a good instance of Wing 1, which we calculated to be less than 1% chance of happening. Otherwise, Trio was fairly scripted, with just a cliff portal to instantly travel to the next pre-event once Trio is done. For Matthias, our main issue were the 2 repeating mechanics, his Blood Shield and his Sacrifice mechanic. Firstly, we have a Chrono who brings Reflect for his bubble, and a lot of CC for the Sacrifice mechanic. However, the problem is if those 2 mechanics line up, or if the Chrono is chosen for Sacrifice while the bubble mechanic is happening. So for this, we had to have both a backup Reflect, which we put on Quickness Firebrand, and a backup CC carry. So we brought a Ritualist with Spectral Grasp. This fight could be done with a more aggressive comp. However, if mechanics overlapped, the group could wipe very easily. So we played it safe by having a healer.
For VG pre-event, we stacked all the Guardians at the middle in order to cleave them as much as possible. We used the Mesmer portal to get to the boss instantly after all the Guardians died. On Vale Guardian, we used the classic heal druid tank in order to handle the Seekers while not moving the boss at all. On the splits, we started on the Red Guardian since it's usually the slowest one to die. We stacked all the Guardians in order to cleave them. As for the green circle, we just dodged it since it can be only done in the split phase. On Spirit Woods, it's all about having portals in order to navigate much faster. It might feel it is not doing much, but it can save minutes. On Gorseval main phase, we had to worry only about the knockbacks. Ritualist took care of that with stability. On the split phase, we had to divide into two and just blast as fast as possible and use impairing conditions, such as chill and cripple to slow the ghost down as much as possible. On Sabetha, we calculated our DPS and decided to do only 3 cannons. We chose to do west once and north twice in order to have a safe area on the platform.
For Adina, the gimmick is having an odd number of players. Since each pillar only hides 2 players, we used the cheese method to hide 3 players behind 1 pillar, and only require to spawn 2 pillars total. A third player can actually survive behind the pillar if they position themselves precisely. It might sound like a meme, but you actually have to do some maths. You first count the tiles between Adina and the pillar. Let's say this is 2 tiles. The third player then multiplies that number by 2.5. So in this case, they would have to stand 5 tiles behind the pillar. If you do this correctly, all 3 players will actually survive. The problem is you have to be quite precise, so if the pillar is placed at an angle, counting the exact distance can be finicky. So we try to align the pillar in the Y direction and make counting the tiles as accurate as possible. For the split phase, we tried many different strategies and found the fastest technique was to split into 2 groups and making sure that the Hand of Eruption that knocks you back is killed as fast as possible so we don't get constantly knocked back or knocked into the sand. Next up is Sabir, where we use the standard speedrun strategy of having a portal from each Wisp event straight to the boss. Again, Ritualist was Giga here since they brought a lot of CC and allowed us to just ignore the Wisps at the final phase, since they had a lot of self-sustain. Our final boss for the entire run is Qadim the Peerless. Here we had to cook specific placements for the fire drops on split. In the first split, we placed the fire drops on the paths of the anomalies for phase 2. And in the second split, we covered the rest of the anomaly paths as they changed per phase. The rest of the fight is played in a safe but standard way, with us finishing the fight at a range to avoid the 10% damage debuff. And with QDP defeated, the full clear is finally over, with a total runtime of 2 hours, 58 minutes, and 14 seconds.
Completely dog shit.